Welcome to March 20th, 2025 coaching call. As you can see here, we got a little bit bigger of a pullback than we anticipated, but remember, this is still a launching point of directional conviction. And I've already gotten long. I just got back from the dealership, so I was a little late, but let me just show you really today what the true invalidation point was. I should have made my zone a little better, so I'll fix this. Right? The true invalidation point was technically where the balance breakout starts is here. I should have adjusted this zone today, but I didn't. You know, you got to learn. That's really where the bounce breakout starts, right? You can see right to that level, this got exhausted. Now, this was tough. I mean, this was sort of a false breakout out of this small little bounce here. This was a very strong zone that these zones have not really been adjusted. The one above this one, but you can see even this one here with this high volume node that just broke down, right? This area has been a problem area, and I did take profits on the long that held today. Now, I don't like to go against lately, especially after a big long day. They usually get reversed, especially into really strong resistance. Like this zone is about as strong as this zone. So on some level, I could have expected a bigger reaction. That's why I took profits. However, I guess in isolation, I was anticipating maybe less of a steep pullback based on my zone being a little higher, which was probably a mistake. Let's get rid of this balance here. We all know this has been balancing. Now we have a little deeper pullback. But remember, this is still support that's in the top of this range here. So boom, 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 boom. Now, technically, I went this long worked here. This long didn't, right? Now, you could say, well, if you go from, why didn't you have your stop below this point if this was the true invalidation point? This point was the true invalidation point. The point is I just don't want to take that wide of a stop, right? That's like almost 2%, right? And I'm not going to take 2% on one idea in this environment. However, you know what I mean? I am going to take a small loss here because small losses equal trading success. Now, if you have a personality where a loss equals you're a loser and you're going to get really emotional about this, just buy and hold only. And I do that strategy as well. I have a diversified strategy. Basically, anytime I trade on all time frames for different purposes. Day trades can potentially lead into swing trades. I don't just take a swing trade and hope for it works with a really big stop, right? So I took 2 stops here. I just basically had to go to the dealership. The brakes really didn't even need fixing. I guess the moisture was making it squeak. I guess I'm not really. It's been pretty snowy here where I'm from. But you can see now that I've adjusted this true buying tail. Now it's held, and I'm already long on the daily, which you already saw. Okay. Oh, I guess it got what the heck? Yeah, there was an arrow here. There should be. See what happens when you don't save. There we go. And now we're good. Okay, so yeah, this is still a daily setup. It's not, I wanted something tighter, but if you could just see really, right? I mean, it's been really just a back and forth. There really hasn't been any directional conviction that's sustainable one way. I mean, as I was taking longs today, and the first one worked and the second one didn't, whatever, I am looking at this intermediate term downtrend, right? Depending on how you look at it, right? This is a strong, larger. So basically, the larger time frame bias is a weight that you would add to shorts as we're coming up into this trend because this has been the larger time frame bias for us as day traders. I mean, just look at this pop down, pop down, pop down. Now, I did have a trend line here. Now, what I also, you can see I moved them. So I had this trend line here, right, for this breakout yesterday, which worked. I just got to remind myself that these pullbacks are steep. So don't get so excited with this whole pullback continuation thesis. There's this bias that as a long holder, it's hard for me even to do shorts psychologically, but I do short because it is income. Like, the shorts have worked faster. Now I got out of that short yesterday quick because I was anticipating this bounce breakout to the upside. Now I knew there was going to be directional conviction based on those pre-market factors that increase the probabilities of a trend, which I talked about like a couple days ahead of time. So I said, hey, we got FOMC on Wednesday that increases volatility. Now remember, in isolation, market moving news, whether it's good or bad, neutral, doesn't necessarily mean it moves up or down or have a trend day up or down that's sustainable or a trend day up. It could just be a really extremely volatile sideways day. So if you're brand new, you really shouldn't be in the market 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after for real. You're going to get whipsawed out. I've lost the most amount of money ever on the ES trying to shadow an AB someone else, basic, in a whole pattern here. You don't want to do that. So what you want to do, right, is you want to basically follow your own system and take what works for you, right? Everyone brings their own psychology to something. So I would say don't get in. Now, luckily, we were in before that with that signal that I gave right before the last coaching call that I'm still in that trade. I'm swing. I have a runner in and I want to get good. My statistician came back and gave me a huge analysis. It blew my freaking mind. And I mean, it's easy in hindsight to see it, but it's like when you're actually in execution mode, you're in reptilian mode in fight or flight, and it is exhausting, and you're not actually zooming out sometimes. So I want to hold this runner to like up here, right? I don't care if it comes back down. I want to get better at that. I also should have. I want to get better at holding the financing target higher. So my hit rate might go down a little bit because this, if you have a smaller target, you might get financed, but your risk to reward ratio might not be as high. So right? So I'm still betting on the thesis of a pullback continuation pattern, but it is a big pullback. Now, what we didn't get is see how this was an engulfing pattern, right? This was horrible. Bam. Now, the next day, you could say, well, this kind of engulfed this. So I'm like kind of sideways, even sideways down. So as it popped up into larger time frame resistance, that still pushed us down. But now, right, it's not just this intermediate term downtrend, right, which has been the dominant larger time frame bias for our shorts, which adds a weight to the probability on the scale that I give you guys, right? Every time we go up, but anytime we're now into multiple time frame analysis, now we're into a more dominant trend here. So this has been down, but this has been up. This has been a very long period of time that broke down. But even though this is a long period of time that broke down, it's still smaller than this period of time that broke up. So we not only have time, we have magnitude of the range that's bigger than this range, and then we have the magnitude of the move and the magnitude of the move. The fact that we're bottom building on a move, I mean, this, if you just look at the last couple, if you're not on the daily, or if you just look at this looks terrifying, right? But if you zoom out now in this context, it looks okay. Now we're bottom building. That's why Matt's going along on these double bottoms here. The problem is that these, everyone thinks in terms of like up or down, but really I'm always thinking in terms of when are we going to start congesting and going sideways and go bamboo and then start like making sustained momentum go. And I need to go long and short in the same day, which is really a lot of these are doing that. Now, going back to how this was a trend, right? We had a week-long balance. That's a mature balance by the definition of what I put in the channel based on probabilities. We also have a volatility contraction over a decent longer period of time right here, right? Then we had FOMC, right? So that's 3. And then we had way above average. Look, way above average, guys. Way above average volatility environment where we haven't had a trend in a long time, aka the mature balance that's sideways, right? And like a spring that's compressed. That's why the volatility contraction. And the longer I hold it, I'm going to get tired. And then I have to release the spring, and that spring is going to explode. And that's really how I'm looking at these trends. I'm looking at time, compression, and expansion. Now we have an above average volatility environment, aka that increases an odds for a trend day. And then on that same, and then what else was there? The FOMC news. What else? I listed like 13 of them. That might have been all that was for the Bitcoin. There might have been a gap in the futures we were retesting for ES that increases the probability of a trend. But anyway, going back to multiple time frame alignment, right? Now I'm at a place where this time frame, which has been larger time frame down, is now neutral, right? With the idea that it could start if we break out of this, and I was hoping we're going to get a more shallow pause day, start to go back up because, like I said before, this balance is bigger than this balance. This trend is bigger than that trend. I'm going with the dominant, blah, blah, blah. Also, you can just see here, look, let's just follow the dominant trend. If we zoom out even more, right? Smash, right? Moving average. And we kind of go around it. And then we keep going. And now we're going around it. And then we're going to keep going, right? And the market's moving a series of thrust and corrections. Even if you have a bullish long-term view, they never really They're never just going to go straight up. Just remember that, especially in this environment. And we've had so many people that were liquidated here. Then when they come back up, they're going to sell at break even, and then short traders also jump on board. So anyway, why this is potentially a long setup, and it might be a little early, is that one, it's at 435. Okay, I mean it was earlier, right? It's still later in the day. It's in the last quad of the day. In other words, I'm not taking this at 4 in the morning where, oh my God, this might be a bearish engulfing pattern because the trends just started kind of a thing. Maybe if we just look at that type of time of day is one factor. So there's these pre-market factors that I talked about that you need to do, like the daily call before it happens for these trends that I've identified. But like a bigger picture pattern is another one. We don't have a bigger picture pattern, unfortunately. Whatever. But then when you're already prepped for that trend day to come in, what you need to do is then, okay, what are these confirming factors? You don't want to look for the confirming factors before you identify the pre-market factors, or you might actually be just chasing a sideways volatility day and you're going to be getting whipsawed out every single time. So now you're already prepped for a trend like I was. Then you say, okay, what's confirming? Well, the pace, character of the market, the pace, the price action. Look at the charts. It's a big green candles on large vertical volume with an above average relative volume, which we had way above average relative to the previous 20 days. Also, the real volume was confirming the price. We also had other markets, which is another real time category, also in alignment. We also had an intermarket synchronicity. That's also a subcategory of other markets. In the ES has is an index, so I can also have an added edge there where I look underneath the hood and look at this thing called an AD line and an NYC tick, which is unique to indices only because they show how all the 500 stocks are behaving, so to speak. It's actually I'm using even for the AD line, I'm not using the S&P. You can use the S&P 80 line, which would be to 500 to minus 500. That might make more sense for you guys. But I want even a broader market view, so I'm using an 80 line based on the New York Stock Exchange, which is 2000, whatever, something like that. And so I'm getting a big view, but I'm looking for disconnects and divergences in those, which are awesome, which were way better than using something like a CCI and the Bitcoin price action to look for those on lower time frames because you're just, basically an indicator, an oscillator is just a derivative of price, but an indice is completely different. So anyway, just to get back on track, that's why I was able to predict that. Now, unfortunately, it just as that was bottom building, there's always a scenario like, man, this might really pull back. Okay, maybe the lower odds scenario might happen. I know a lot of these prices have been crazy failing like this, but after one leg count, two leg count, three leg count, four leg count, five, on this little bottom here, whatever, trying, and then we broke out of this balance. So we have a balance breakout small. It's like this is now potentially going to reverse, but we might have a battle now. Now, if we, I could be early in this fails and I take a loss. And as a day trader and as a swing trader, you have to take your loss like a man. Okay. That means that, you're not a loser. You're taking your small loss. There's this buy and hold mentality, which is actually counter psychological. Okay. To the short term income producing trading, day trading, swing trading strategy. Because, while we DCA, it's like, oh, we got a great level. It's all 50%. You put in something. Then it goes down 70 to 70% more to, now it's 70% down, another leg down from the all-time high. You DCA again. I do it too. Now the discipline that I have is that I have to differentiate the psychology between this allocation for that allocation for that. Now recently, right, the exchange that I trade one half of my trades on was hacked. And there has been times where I have part of my trades in Ethereum, part of my trades in Bitcoin. I was doing that, get a little beta rate thing. And the problem is that anyone who's holding Ethereum would have got robbed that day. So I had kind of a panic attack because all of a sudden, just by happenstance, I just wasn't in. I was either in an all Bitcoin one or what. But I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, I could get robbed and hacked. And then at the end of the day, what if all these coins go to zero? I'm thinking, oh my God. You know what I mean? That's just I just have to. So then I just have to go with the flow of that and say, well, then that's the Wu way. That's fate. That's the way of the path that God has chosen for me, and I will take the path of accepting it and finding the best solution to go forward. Because okay, yes, please, and then the next one. That's the psychology you need to be a trader on a short-term producing trade. Now, the best way to do it actually is to come in with a plan ahead of time. Now, I most traders will do this, and I've been there as well. I'm giving you some feedback from my stats. Like, well, on a day you lose, you might have your most trades that day, right? A little bit of idea, you need energy, you need to get it back. So you're always going counter trend on that day or whatever. So what you need to do is plan out the thesis ahead of time, which is why I'm still sticking to the idea that the lowest odds scenario today is the bearish engulfing pattern. Not and technically, right? It could come down here and then maybe hold at this launching point. But the idea is that I'm the lower odds based on this and how much leg counts were down. And like I said, the time frame analysis and just my bet for today is that it's going to hold for a pullback continuation. So I was anticipating a pause day for the highest probability scenario, right? The second highest scenario was sideways up, where we'd get like a pullback maybe to this 40 or whatever. I'm sorry, this 20, hopefully more shallow, right? And then we get a break up here. Now, when I said, are we going to get a dog leash to this 40 moving average? I should have clarified. It's like, well, I don't think it's high odds for that today, just based on the range expectation. You know what I mean? But I thought the second highest scenario was a breakout above here, maybe a little close, right? Now, this is still technically a pause day because we have a couple hours left and we got to see how it closes. And I am long right now, prior, right? So, what was I going to say? Yeah, I'm just looking at the way this behaves here, right? And just it's not a big thing. I mean, this thing is just basically, yeah, acted as resistance, it's acted as resistance. We've overshot, 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 and then finally had that mature balance. Now we're pulling back into it. I had a zone here where we were bottom building and I had to just take it, right? And then I blasted up. So I just had to have I went so how did I take it after I just, got stopped out or whatever? One of the thoughts is I had is like, well, if I get stopped out, I said, well, I followed my system and that's what great traders do. I didn't instantly go in again. I had to wait for something to happen, right? And I had to still stick to the thesis, right? That this potentially is going to be a pause day, and now I'm prepping for a move into tomorrow, which could then be the sideways up. Uh, but just reminding myself that these things are extremely volatile lately. I mean, just look at the power of the red and how quickly it can go down. So the only reason I'm betting on a pullback continuation scenario here rather than, let's say it was here, right? It broke up into this now resistance. Now we're not as many leg counts down. We're actually have, if you did your daily call leg count, right? You're one leg from here, top one, two, right? You're actually two leg counts down up into it. That's actually should be sideways down, right? It's only when you get like to 5 to 6 that you should be thinking pause to potentially pause for a couple of days and maybe reversal if we're lucky. That is if the intermediate time frame that we've been down is now exhausted because we've been sideways long enough into the big picture uptrend that's been happening for a long time that we've identified live in the channel on January 10th of 2023. But that's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one here that broke out of this balance since November of the previous year. So we're maybe kind of get exhausted into it. So that's the idea that we're going to go sideways around this. We haven't touched this blue one in a while, and now we might go up and touch it. So I'm still betting on that thesis. Now, what's not in my favor, unfortunately, too much. This was a huge hook from extreme, so that could have been a heads up that hey, this thing maybe short-term oversold momentum-wise more than you think. But hindsight's 2020. You can always come in with hindsight bias and come in and judge yourself too hardcore. You have to come in and just be objective and say, okay, what was I thinking then? Was it correct process? Did I follow my previous plan that I set ahead of time before the price action took place? And then in that case, yeah, you're following. Now, if this was earlier in the day and you look at the bias, the intraday bias, which is another factor in the system, right? So there's real-time factors, and then there's your pre-market factors, which is your trade plan, aka your daily call, right? So, but obviously you want to weight this, right? I'm not going to go long against such a crazy bias earlier in the day, all things being equal. But since this is later in the day with the potential turning point based on yesterday's prep, breakout pattern based on the leg count being potentially exhausted into a multiple time frame uptrend now that could potentially resolve this sideways short-term bounce that we've been in based on the breakout. I went long again, and I'm going to take another loss again because I'm okay with taking small losses equal trading success in this strategy, and if in for your income producing trades, and that's really the only thing you can control. So if you get into a trade and you focus on your risk and you get good trade location, and then you focus on being okay with that psychologically. If it takes it, just imagine it, and then all right, you can stay in it. Okay, so let's just take a look at some other markets. Okay. Right, straight up into that, right? Are we going to get this another leg down, or are we going to get right the pullback continuation through this, right? Like I said, in leg count and isolation, this has been the dominant larger time frame bias, but it has been since December 17th. So December to March technically is 3 months. I mean, that is big picture, you know, bias to the downside, right? It's just the idea that now potentially we're getting this high volume node here that could exhaust it a little bit. We're keeping in mind here, this is a fractal bounce. We haven't even gotten down to the bottom of it yet. And regarding the new stuff, I like the developments, but I'm pretty good at differentiating my excitement level between, oh man, this is going to be great for the long term because every announcement bullish about this and that. I know it hasn't been reflective of price too much lately, but if you just imagine 4 years ago, it's pretty crazy that this is a huge focus for the United States romper room government, aka the military wing of the New World Order. Now, hindsight 2020, huge inverse zero line reject, momentum pullback, right? That's where the sideways thing can come in. But is this bounce breakout, which was the logic for also going long at into this deeper, I guess now deeper into this balance, top of this balance breakout, and actually now on the smaller time frames, this is the last pullback that was the breakout from a momentum point of view. So, that's the idea, right? Because it's so many more leg counts down, but we'll see what happens. Now going to the ES, right? This was a signal that I gave for your portfolio managers around this time, triple top, right? Going here. It was about 100% of the range it broke from. So even if you didn't want to do this on first test here or here, after the triple top at the 100% range, you have a principle of a giant pattern upon a principle that you need to take profits. This was a 101. I was very confident when I said, call your portfolio man. Now, I was not as confident when someone, George, or I think it was George, asked me, hey, is the bottom in here? I don't know when it was, but as this is coming down, I'm still like same thing for Bitcoin. I'm thinking in terms of multiple time frame analysis. Bearish, bearish, bearish here. We also broke this, which is going to be bearish, bearish, bearish. But now we went, you know, now we went short term 100% of the range we broke from on this time frame, which is way smaller than this time frame. So keep that in mind, right? And I thought maybe we'd even have some possibility at this gap here. This gap, I was, right? There's a hammer, didn't really get much, but here's the new zone, right? Which is basically high volume node. We went sideways and then we blasted up here. So this trend now is short term exhausted into this bigger trend, but now coming back up into here. Plus, we had 100% range principle here, right? Are we out of the water yet? Absolutely not, because even though this was good odds to come up here, and now we have this V reversal, right? I'm still thinking, yes, this is exhausted here into this, and that's why we got this. But zooming out, this is way bigger, and this is way bigger, and this is exhausted into that. So it's a lot trickier now where we are in terms of uh, who's going to take control here. Um, in isolation, like I said, this could potentially be a V recovery, the V sideways here, dip, and then a go, right? We haven't touched this 40. We have 20, 200, top of the V, right? Pullback, right? When this fails, if this cup fails, then we come back here. This might be a double bottom, right? But just keep in mind, right, the possibility that since even though this fractal now, bottom of this is exhausted into this now, we got the pop that we talked about, which I was not as more confident now that this larger time frames can be up. Now, I, larger time frame bias now reversed up here. It's fair enough to say potentially it's up, but just like I said, keep in mind because we've moved 100% of this, and because this is triple top, you did go straight down. You could be short-term exhausted. It doesn't mean this is completely invalidated. This could be a pullback up here, then we break down here, and then blah blah blah. Who knows? Maybe we come back here and it takes a while, and then we fulfill something more like this. Then it gets a movement, and then we go back up. I don't know. You know, um, just I'll tell you what. If in that scenario we got to the bottom of this bounce, you'd have a giant, bigger picture bounce breakout pattern here. You would definitely this is an automatic long. It's just trickier because, like I said, in terms of like this box here is smaller than these two boxes, so it's tricky. Now, very confident on the on the resistance here. Straight line move down. Decently confident here to say this could turn bullish, but like I said, we're not out of the water yet till we break this V recovery and at least come up here and try to test this 40. Now, one of the things I'm looking at that I did talk about earlier is the beauty principle of is this uptrend intact here, right? We came back up here and you can't just use this as plain resistance. It's got to be how it behaves around it. Smash, behave it. And then I said, hey, this could overshoot just like it did in October of 2023, right? And we kind of did overshoot, and now we're coming back up. But remember, until we cross above it, right? Now remember, there's that so-called death cross, right? Where if you can, these are holding below this for a while, and then you cross above the 40, the 20, and the 200. It's a really bullish signal. It's obviously a late signal. That's why I was telling people to, potentially this could reverse here. And obviously this was a great sell signal. Just two obvious principles: 100% range principle on those giant yellow boxes, and a 1, 2, 3 triple top. So yeah, and so until we break like this so-called death cross here from a larger time frame perspective, we're not out of the water yet. Now let's just zoom out for us buy and hold guys as well. Right? Things take time, right? Nice pause, sideways up. Now we're going up here, pulling back. Right? This hook from extremes, right? We're in this oversold region confirming. This is on pace, right? It'd be nice if, you know, at this point in time, when this decides to break, that we're at least breaking this, launching down point of directional conviction. It might take 3-4 weeks. I mean, this thing can just bounce around, go back up, and then we get something, and then we have a bigger bounce to break from, rather than try to push up against a V pattern. But like I said, zooming out, it's the same principle. This sideways action is smaller than this sideways action, so you could expect here that this would pop up. Now, I am betting this is going to eventually break through here. That's just the bet. And this is the date that, based on these time cycles, you can identify a trend. Like it went sideways here, and this was the last low, and then it busted out here, right? We were up here, and then it was like a giant bounce at this point, right? So to speak. And then it, you can see here, broke up here, and then obviously a nice. I love these retests of giant bounce breakout patterns. I'm very confident to get very bullish on those, right? That you have this wide double bottom now, but it's not just any double bottom. It's a double bottom on top of this giant balance. And you just, that's the bounce breakout patterns. Now, up here, right, this was that mature balance. We had that nice creep out. And this is actually when I did call, if you go back in the channel, the bounce breakout pattern here, because there was high odds that because this was so mature and on a smaller time frame, this was a creep up pattern that it had high odds to break, right? So the question is now, it'd be nice, right, if we continue to mature, and this would be what date? October 25th. I get to get a little bit higher than back to 109 by then. You know what I mean? If it just went sideways to them, then we get the breakout. Be nice if we get something like this. So we get that June 25th, April, May, maybe go away. May gets delayed because of this, but who knows? Maybe not. Like I just reopened all possibilities. And then we get that giant, forward move that we've had. But keep in mind, I mean, this has moved fairly well. Now let's go to another chart. Also, because this is just a video, and I don't think oh, there is one person on it. Okay. I was just saying, Timothy, I was talking about this trade that I got into later, the whole psychology of it. I'm not sure when you jumped on. No one was on for a while. I'm like, oh, I'm relaxed because I didn't give this one live, so I don't mind taking a loss on my own. So I'm always worried someone might shadow me just to get in late in the day. But I just basically was going over the different ideas of how this coming in with my thesis that this pullback continuation pattern potentially could still be involved here because of how many leg counts down and the different time frame analysis. But enough on that. I maybe you caught some of that. If you have any questions or whatever at any time, let me know how your trade's going. But just FYI, this one is recorded, so if you don't want to, you know, ask any live questions, that's fine too. No worries, no worries. Anytime, anytime. But anyway, oh, did you have a question, Tim, or you unmuted yourself?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thanks. I keep up with everything you're doing still, and my trade frequency has gone down quite a bit. Um, yeah, it's just the nature of the markets, but it
That's
seems
good
like
though.
now,
Yeah,
you know, I was thinking this is the best time to buy, and it
right.
was interesting how you shared that report from Tia, and she's saying the same things like, "What are you guys waiting on? This is the time to buy."
It just never feels right in your body to go long or you get to against this countervailing trend from whatever time frame, whether I'm doing the days to the swing, which is kind of the same exit to get in, or the same entry to get in rather. But also, when we DCA for the portfolio, it's we know we got to make profits when there's blood in the streets. I just psychics notwithstanding, actually, if you back test for stuff, it's pretty good hit rate. And I just find it interesting that, the Bitcoin time cycle is just based on, a basic principle. Previous market behavior influences future market behavior. And, that kind of a decode that Corby found that 30 week that actually has been very useful. And then certain larger time frame patterns and just knowing that, they don't always work, but you can just see it kind of works really well so far. And I just find it interesting that it's kind of in alignment with her phases of the market. Um, and then just one thing that's just been just taking forever to build up here is this Bitcoin market cap dom. And obviously, you can see the Bitcoin's dominance has been rising. Bitcoin's prices have been exploding. Altcoins are contrary at their all-time low. So it's like kind of ripe for this inversion, so to speak. And I'm applying the same TA principles that I did with the ES. We might be a little bit ahead of our time. Hey, you might have even got that 100% break here, and now we're going to go up here. Now let's just say this alt scenario season lower odds doesn't happen, which it's not just at this smashing move here. It's also just at that mathematical stat, that golden mean ratio. Just coincidentally, just pointing that out. But there's also this selling tail. So just in the event that this doesn't happen, right? Which it could, anything can happen. Up here, right? This would be everyone, and just say we came up here in the event, and in the event this then does get that move, that's going to be a way bigger alt season. I'm not saying I want to stay there for that, but if you're having trouble just imagining this reversing because you're just following this and it's been so bullish, just imagine inverting the scale and you know creeping down. Would you want to go long on a double bottom? Maybe not, but it's just the idea that, hey, this thing potentially is getting exhausted. You could always look at it from another angle. Now, we're not actively trading this chart, but we are just, gauging this market cap ratio between, Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market to see like, where's the smart money, where's it flowing? And just keep in mind, it could be such that they're both going up at the same time. It's just that one's going up faster than the other, even though they're slightly diverging on this chart. Uh, I'm just imagining other cycles and other times, other sentiments where everyone loved Bitcoin. Bitcoin was king for a while. I'm just imagining because I've been in the game for a while, and then because I had a good sentiment indicator before from like about 200 people, and I would gauge it and live, right? I see when they were active, when they would come in, and I'm telling you, every single time it would be when it was at the absolute time to sell. People just didn't want to sell, and it happened for Tensor, which luckily for us in PPT, we captured that at 56, 57, and I think it only went to maybe 67, 78, something in the 70s, something like that. Since then, we'll look at that one in a minute. But the point is now it's saying that it's down way below. It crashed maybe 60, 70%. So at the time I gave the sell signal in the fundamentals group that I'm in, because I have to, know what coins to invest in. I got a little, hey, this is a trading channel too here. So I was saying, oh, Matt's just a little scared. He took profits. I'm like, well, and I sympathize with those guys and that guy, because like that used to be me in my approach to longer term ideas when I fell in love with projects last bull run. And now I don't care. I fall in love with any project. You can always get back in. Uh, you can just see where we are here. Let's take a look.
Yeah, that's really true. Some of the coins the ones I don't have much interest in, I'm really good at putting stops on. And it's nice when price targets hit, like it's a pleasant surprise, like, oh, nice. We sold, great.
Yeah.
But there's, the coins that I like SUI and um, even TIA, ICP to an extent. Um, I haven't put stops on those just because I like them. I think
Yep.
they are gonna do well. I mean, and I'm not so concerned on the timeline for those. Um, but I've been burned so many times already, like putting aggressive stops in, and it might bounce and hit my stop, but then it goes on another few points where it I feel like it's a delicate balance.
No, for sure. I mean, I would just say like for your DCA and your longer term, your buy and hold strategy on your four, that's like basically there's four time frames. That's our long term time frame, investor time frame. You know, you you don't want to have stops. You can have a mental stop, right? You shouldn't
Yeah.
so you can have exits, but the idea is that you're probably going to get out at the worst time on the dawn side. You know what I mean? And if you take half off and move your stop to break even, you can do that if you hit your targets. But I wouldn't get out of stuff because the whole idea of our buy and hold is that we DCA. So like let's say you went in on this signal here or whatever, right? We got just a little move here, whatever, and it goes down multiple leg counts down, it breaks this, and then it goes down here. Technically, right, we should buy again, right? And just DCA it out because they double down, they do martingale. So they're thinking, hey, yeah, I'll take a huge loss on this, which for us as day and swing traders, where we only lose our fixed percent risk model, which we defined, absolute most 2%. And you should have an amount on the day that, I would say you shouldn't lose more than absolute max. Man, I'm just going through a control here in my mind. Even different tournaments I was in was too high. I don't even go this high. I mean, I've been in tournaments before, years when I was starting out. They had really tight controls where they would let you lose. Let's say they gave you the tournament account, they would let you lose like 6%, which I think is way too much, right? In one day, I think you should have a way smaller amount because then you just end up revenge trading. Because like just remember, I have a note on my desk here that says, remember, you don't have to make it back today. There's that idea, right? But the problem is like I never do income producing trades on the day and swing time frame and our position time frame if we're lucky with a martingale strategy. I'm anti martingale. So I'm not actually ever going to day trade anything but Bitcoin, and I was Ethereum, but I'm scared to now. I don't do it anymore. ES, these slower ones, which if you use enough leverage in the ES and you have a big enough account in Bitcoin, um, it moves plenty. So, but the idea is that the buy and hold is that you're just going to get completely whipsawed out because you have to establish this core position. The buy and hold is like you have a bigger fundamental thesis as to why you're getting in. Now, there's this whole idea, Trumps don't get into things to lose. Well, yeah, but it's that plus the fact that government's talking about it, plus the fact that I mean, if the thesis that this if AI and the graphics processors which did the machine learning which did to Nvidia, which if you got in 10 years ago was in Nvidia, it was like a micro cap, right? In crypto, I was like, woof. I mean, the stock, that's an amazing stock, right? So the idea is that now this is now shifting over to the blockchain. So if this bet's right, and I bet huge on this, way more than I should have bet a lot more into Bitcoin because the stress, I underestimated the stress levels, but I'm huge into the AI stuff now because I just think, at best, I hope it doesn't. At best, it should make these a lot more transparent, businesses, governments, while also protecting the private stuff that needs to be protected, like you know, uh, information, private information, but also everything should be public so these people just don't get away with the murder they have. But obviously, stuff like bank accounts are where things are directed because the great thing about a lot of this stuff is going to take out a lot of middlemen, like lawyers that charge 100 grand just to do $1 million deal, just to write templates and re-sign stuff to get people not to rob each other. But if you actually can program it into a code, which is what some of these contracts will do, you could have huge contracts be done with these if-then statements on the blockchain, thus removing 100, huge 10% fees that lawyers charge just to do these templates that they have already in their firm that they don't spend, you know what I mean? They just charge a huge amount. So that's, and that, and so besides the AI stuff, which I've talked about, is Tau. Let's go to Tau real quick. Tau and Tau, even Theta's getting in on AI. Tensor, obviously, even though SWE is a layer, it's not technically AI per se, I think it's a layer one, but it can basically it's being used for multifaceted. It's actually being used for everything really. It's being used for AI right now. I could publish some of the stuff of that. I've been researching. It's being used for real world assets. It's being used for gaming. Besides the Sega thing, it's kind of overwhelming. I don't publish everything. They're actually coming out with some handheld or something. And they're saying, hey, you don't even need to know about crypto for this to actually take off. I don't know how they're going to interface it. I mean, that was my thesis for why I went so big into Theta last time, is because the idea is that it didn't need mass adoption per se, like Bitcoin did, because based on its partnerships, the technology is going to be embedded, the software is going to be embedded into these devices. For example, it has a partnership with Sony, and it hasn't happened yet. So I'm like, what the heck's going on, Mitch? There's supposed to be a Theta node downloadable within the PlayStation 5, so anyone can just press a button and like earn these NFTs and like get skins and like earn T fuel. And but another reason I got into it especially is because it was supposed to help with video processing decentralization, and it allowed for better rendering and things like that. So I was like, why aren't they contacting you know Netflix about that Mike Tyson fight with Jake Paul that was paused on me several times? Thank God I didn't pay for it. But if you had Netflix or something, you had a horrible experience live. So we'll see. You know, the idea is that, well, fundamental, like let's just, I can go into technicals. That's for our trading. We already did that. Let's just go into fundamentals, right? It's a different psychology. It's martingale. It's risk management, not anti-martingale, which is our fixed percent model rule. So the idea is that, okay, sentiment is clearly bearish, right? But the fundamentals have really been, like, if you look on their website for some of these companies, their partnerships have never been better. Uh, if you look at what Trump said today in his speech that I posted in the room, it I'm glad he's not just saying Bitcoin. If he was just saying Bitcoin on every single word, he's saying always crypto and Bitcoin, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin or crypto. If he was just using the word Bitcoin on everything, I'd be like, okay, the Bitcoin maxis were right. We're totally screwed. Um, but he's using Bitcoin and crypto and digital assets. So this is actually bigger. We just may be ahead of the curve a little bit. So you know, your hunch that hey, maybe there's opportunity here because there's blood in the streets. I mean, say huge discount, 19 cents, right? And this was what? March 2024. So not too long ago was over $1. We're not the only ones looking at that and saying, hey, buy low, sell high. Let's keep looking at other ones. What other coins have I gone into? Caspa. Caspa's been a great, actually was diverging from the whole market many times on this triple top here. Most of the market was down around in August, but this was at its all-time high. This is a great sell signal. In fact, there was a member in private that asked me I couldn't sell, but this was a sell signal. Oh well, he's holding through this. You know, like I said, it's between 5 and 7 cents, and just in August it was 20. So if you have faith that it can at least get to that, right? This is how the DCA guys, or the buy and hold guys think. Now, the buy and hold guys, I know some of them won't even sell when it goes to here. They will only sell when we get to that crazy mass euphoria that we simply haven't had since 2021. Where I walked into the pizza shop and the guy flipping pizza behind the desk was saying, hey man, I got more money than anyone I've ever been around me. I made 76K something today, and one of his bags went to 76K. What was it? Well, guess what? Next time I went there, it's below break even. He didn't sell. Okay. So, that was it, and that was actually the top. So, you know that when the guy, when everyone's making money in this, that's when the grandma's buying crypto, get the heck out. Okay. That's really what I experienced. You know, I knew grandmothers that were buying theta. Like, for example, grandmothers can't turn on the remote. They shouldn't be buying a coin that hasn't even really been on the market yet, So, but that's that was the sell signal. So yeah, we haven't had that. I know some will. Like for example, I published some of that stuff about sentiment. Like everyone, Matic was a huge coin that was talked about last run. This was just in March, up over $1. Now you're not seeing the past history because this just happens to be on Bybit where I'm having on, you know, I'd have to go to a different exchange or whatever to get past history. That's why I have dot here. Yeah, this one gives a bigger history. So I made a lot of money. I wouldn't say a fortune. I almost said a fortune. Should have bet more. I bet a lot more this time. On dot last morning, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be trading this chart because it's like, ugh, right? For long, short. But I mean, just from a level, megaphone pattern, but DCA level 439. Um, Talks with TikTok, Gavin Wood, undervalued, hasn't really done a lot of marketing. But if you look on dot and its testnet KSM, which actually outperformed dot, and dot went to an astronomical level for anyone who's not greedy. I remember last time people weren't happy with 4 to 55. Like this is the euphoria. This is when like a channel that I just started for fun with no marketing behind it took off, and it was just like a gambler's craziness. But that's just not that you could just see everyone was joining every day. Well, just because we look at this. You remember, like, this is all anyone remembers, but why should you only make money? Most people didn't only make money from a very small portion. Like, this is the move, but look at the time portion. It's much smaller to be in a steep up, to be in a bull market, up market, directional market. Markets go sideways. Way longer in general of all time frames of any markets of all time will always go sideways longer because that's the main purpose of markets, and that's just we have to remind ourselves. Now, what's in our favor is that now let's say you were a DCI guy that doesn't have trading skill and you saw this huge move and you're thinking, oh, markets, this is down, this is a great level to buy. Well, you have a great price, but now you're not thinking in terms of time frames, right? Us traders know, oh shit, this fool's going to be holding for a long time. He's not thinking, he's thinking, oh, great level. Now we're going to go up. We're thinking, oh, great, this thing is time frame down. Everyone's wrecked, scared. This thing is possibly, hopefully, going to go sideways for a while. That would be the down for a long time, then it goes sideways for a long time. But what comes after sideways? Up, right? Is this balance mature? You best believe it's mature. And everyone's getting depressed about it, but always remind yourself this principle. The longer in time a balance matures, the greater the strength of the power of the trend that can break from it. And we're at the bottom of the balance. This is a long entry for a DCA guy. Clearly, we're in a mature balance, right? Now, a trader might say, hey, this is a strong move. This is a double bottom. We could just go sideways here. Yeah, so it doesn't mean it has to reverse here. I'm not saying trade this, saying establish a core position without a stop loss on an amount that you can afford to lose. Problem is, I've, I bet everything ahead. I'm 100% in portfolio, reloaded on profits that I should have kept more in the tether uh, because I just think this is an opportunity. It just doesn't feel right because you're like, oh man, I shouldn't be DCAing here. I gave a dot portfolio signal not too long ago. Dot was below $3, and that I'm sorry, below $4, and that was my signal. Very simple. I'm telling you, if you only buy and hold TA wise, it's way easier because it's like on your emotions because the buy and hold psychology is if I just hold long enough, I know it'll work out. That cannot be what you do as a trader because you'll just run your stop. Oh my God, you'll run your stop or, you won't follow your plan. Now, running the stops has never been my problem, right? My thing was, and possibly still is that if I take a loss on one day, if I don't plan it out, I may be getting in based on some revenge issues, not necessarily because I got to make it back. It's that work ethic that's counterproductive in this game, right? It just takes time to build that, right? So I just say this, like, let's say you want to be a doctor, right? I'm not, and Tim, you're a doctor, right? There's different levels. Like if you wanted to be like the most hardcore neurosurgeon, you got to go to school longer. So I would say us that day trade on the Bitcoin and the ES, we're neurosurgeons of finance. I met with a portfolio manager. They're so not sophisticated as we are when it comes to bigger picture timeframes for our major turning points. I mean, they didn't take my signal when I told them, and I had a meeting with them in person. And all she basically said was, "Hey, I'm the best female. I was voted best female such and such in New York State." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well." I don't care. My triple top signal doesn't care. It just was what it was. It wasn't anything that hard to even figure out. And even that 100% range principle, I can't believe people don't even see that. So they don't even see any of that stuff. Um, but then they rely on, oh, well, I always think in terms of fundamentals. Well, true, but I still gave a portfolio signal because it was at a giant major turning point. And I know people are happy about that because at least they see that this works. I also said possibly you could start reloading if you're jonesing right, because based on, the whole larger time frame bias thing. But I'm just not as, confident over the short term. These things can just chop around. But I mean, you can't really beat, 4 to 50 something, right? And you don't even have to be greedy because I mean, this is crazy. I mean, it got to 40 so many times, then had that crazy mania phase into phase 4 of the bull run. And then, just like Bitcoin in November, it all came crashing down. Okay, so it all came crashing down. I'm technically giving you things that increase the probabilities of a trend, pre-trend, because everyone wants to see this go crazy, and then they buy at a shitty price. I'm giving you all that. I'm also saying psychologically, you could just go in. You don't have to you have a stop with your buy and hold to have the stress of watching the screens. I know psychologically people can't stand taking small losses because they don't equate it with trading success, but I can tell you this: why for myself, and this is just myself, I understand it from a feelings point of view. It doesn't make sense technically. My buy and holds go way down more than my tiny small losses on my trading account because I have the anti-martingale versus the fixed martingale. So if I know that quantitatively, why does qualitatively, I'm totally okay with this shit going down on my portfolio. And if I take like a small loss, oh, I didn't get it right. It's like that perfectionism thing academically comes out, whatever, which is not good only for the trades because it's like, oh, it's because it's a short-term thing and it's finalized. Well, this is like, you know, man, I hope it works out. But it's still principle based. You can still take profits when you stop big, even when you hit your first target. I'm just saying personally for me, I don't have a stop loss on my buy and hold long-term portfolio. until my giant targets are hit. Then I can do it, right? Because technically, my stop loss is that I have to have it on an exchange. I already have enough money on these exchanges trading it. I'm telling you, I almost got robbed on that Bybit thing. 1.5 billion in Ethereum. I was trading on Ethereum on half size Bitcoin, half size Ethereum. That was a full size account. So, but so I have all this in a ledger. Actually I was staking this for like the longest time, but I recently I did pause that, and now it's mobile. So based on just thinking, hey man, maybe we'll start having something happen more in March, but clearly we haven't yet. But remember, it's the end of March that we're going to see some action based on that time cycle of, I think, the last day in March it predicts. We'll check that out in a second, but it's posted on the channel. But yeah, so let's look. So this is dot is volatile enough. If you're happy with like basically going 4 to 50 something, that's more than a 10x. If you even just do a 10x to $45 conservatively, that's pretty awesome. But and you know me, I can go even lower than this because let's go to a micro. So basically, what I've done is I go to dot, right? Just as tau is relative to Bitcoin, these are all small caps, but tau is the AI play, but Tensor is its micro cap play, beta play, higher beta. Maybe if it goes up, it'll go up a lot more. If it goes down, it'll go down a lot more. And just inside info, tau devs like Tensor devs, they're joining. Now, if we go to dot, where's dot's beta play? Well, it's its testnet KSM, and I know someone that made a huge amount in its holdings. I think the 5 grand went to a huge amount. They started with. They put it on 5. I got a huge amount, and I didn't go on this one. This one at the time, I just was dot was enough for me. But you'll be shocked at how I like. This is at $17. I would say if you want to go in smaller with KSM than you would with dot, just all things being equal. But this is the test net. The dot highly associated with it. So we're talking 17 to 622. So this is a lot more than this is a lot more than a 10x play if you want to play that game. Now, once again, technically, mature balance. We've been in a mature, we know that all balances end in a trend. Facts, right? We know that all trends end in a balance, right? And now we went right trend up, balance for a year, right? Years, and then break down, trend down. Now we've been bouncing even longer, right? What's cool is that even though this price wise dot, all these coins look like they're complete trash. You wouldn't want to buy them. Everything's dead. Just remember, last time we got this run to 50 to this level without the Polkadot trust being filed by the SEC. So like, wow, institutional capital might get involved. So like, I just got to remind myself, okay, institutional capital got involved, but remember, we don't even need these institutions because we moved it last time. Cyclically, there's just going to be this flow of capital that goes into Ethereum, and then it's going to go into these other caps in AI that I've invested in. And isn't it crazy that last time this happened without Donald Trump in 2020 saying on his Twitter, Bitcoin's a scam? And now there's going to be a digital asset, blah, 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 and now the White House is not going to sell. I mean, this is a complete, total platonic reversal. And yet, all the channels that I'm on are absolutely dead for the most part, except a couple fundamental channels that are doing pretty, exciting news. But people's sentiment is dead. The hit rate, the frequency of the chats is completely down. AKA, this is a bullish sign. Sentiment indicators, super bearish, fundamentals, super up. That's the fundamental signal. You don't even need a chart, right? If you want to just be an investor. On top of the chart looking really low on all this stuff. So yeah, KSM. Whew, says I might actually start buying some of this. I told myself I gotta stop buying. I was, I bought I was going a little crazy there. I gotta, but still, I mean, just me talking about this. Why not? I mean, it's none of these are dead. Well, guys, let's keep our chins up. End of March isn't here. Let's just end on this chart here. Let's end with a little bit of hopium. Oh, where's that chart?
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate the
Yeah.
time.
All right, Tim. Take care. Remember,
You
end of
too.
March. That's when this thing might launch. We'll end with that hope. Take
That's
care,
what I'm
brother.
hoping. Right on. Take
Adios,
care.
brother.